themselves?
Probably a good idea, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just submit that.
We still have 2 more minutes to go, so it's lovely to see everyone. Hi, Mike Walton, and Ross and David, and Michelle, and Jeff, Vivian, hello, and Anne, and Al-Iman is about to enter.
It might be me, Tanya. You might want to turn your volume up a little bit.
Now, is it better?
Yeah.
No.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we definitely hear you. Are you speaking? No, we can't hear you now because you're muted. Either you muted yourself or one of our wonderful Zoom hosts.
Now I'm unmuted. You can hear me clean. Yeah, good.
Yeah, now we can hear you. Definitely, yeah. Shabbat shalom, Philip.
Good Shabbos, Phil.
Good Shabbos. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Good morning, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Morning, Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
We're appreciating these times with you, Tanya.
Quick Shabbat from me to all the Elstree people on Facebook. So we've got Davina, Jackie Bernard, Adrienne, Nancy, Shavik, Carol Bernard, and Susan and Gordon Wolf. Shabbat shalom to all of you. And anybody coming in after this time will have to say Shabbat shalom to themselves because we're on Zoom now. Bye. And okay, and Tina Shaw and Mike Beryl. Shabbat shalom.
One minute to go. Rabbi Peter's putting up his guitar. I think we're about to start our service. Shabbat shalom, good morning and welcome to this joint service of TLC and NLS, Elstree Liberal Synagogue and Nottingham Liberal Synagogue. And we start our Shabbat morning service on page 129 with Matavu. And it's going to be a mixed service, a mixture of elements from Nottingham service and Elstree service. And I think Nottingham will be really pleased because it's going to be a shorter service following the Mincha of Elstree. So we start with Matavu. Ay la 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 ay la 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 ay la 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 Matavu lecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Israel Vani berov chazdecha avo beitecha ay la 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 ay la la ay la 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 ay la 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 ay la 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 Vani tefilati lecha Adonai et ratzon Elohim berov chazdecha aneni be'emet tishecha ay la 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 ay la la ay la 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 Ay la 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 ay la la ay la 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 la. And we started our service with a blessing for all of us, and now Rabbi Pete will take over.
Not going to match that singing, I'm afraid. We're on page 135 in the book, page 135. Yishtabach Shimcha La'ad Malkeinu. Ha'el HaMelech HaGadol VaHaKadosh B'Shamayim UVa'aretz. Ki lecha na'eh Adonai Eloheinu v'Elahei Avotenu shiru shvacha Halel v'Zimra. Barachot v'hodaot me'ata v'ad olam. Baruch ata Adonai Habocher b'shirei Zimra. Ya la 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 ya la Baruch Hu et Adonai Continue on page 136.
We continue now with the two prayers before Shema. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Yoter or uvorech choshech, oseh shalom shalom uvoret hakol. Yoter or uvorech choshech, oseh shalom shalom uvoret hakol. המאיר לארץ ולדרים עליה ברחמים, ופטבו מחדש בכל יום תמיד מעשה וראשית. מה רבו מעשיך, אדוני, כולם בחוכמה עשית, מלאה הארץ קנייניך. תתברך אדוני אלוהינו על שבח מעשה ידיך, ועל מורי אור שעשית, יפארוך סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני, יוצר המאורות. אהבה רבה אהבתנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ותירה, חמלת עלינו. אבינו מלכנו, בעבור אבותינו, שפתחו בך ותלמדם חוקי חיים. תחונו ותלמדנו, ותן בליבנו להבין, להשכיל לשמוע, ללמוד וללמד, לשמור ולעשות, ולקיים את כל דברי תורתך באהבה. וחי עינינו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבנו לאהבה וליראה את שמך. כי בנו בחרת ליחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. Now we'll recite Shema according to the model of liberal synagogue.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shekavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shekavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, כתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
אמת ויציב וישר וקיים, וטוב ויפה הדבר הזה עלינו לעולם ועד. אמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו. מלכנו מלך אבותינו, יוצרנו צור ישועתנו. הודנו ומצלנו מעולם הוא שמך, אין אלוהים זולתך. אמת אתה הוא ראשון ואתה הוא אחרון. ומבלעדיך אין לנו מושיע. ממצרים גאלתנו אדוני אלוהינו, ומבית עבדים בדיתנו. משה ומרים ובני ישראל, הלכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו עולם.
Adonai,
Song of joy of our ancestors when they crossed the Red Sea. Micha Mocha. Thank you very much, Rabbi Pete.
My pleasure.
Sur Israel, Kuma Bezrat Israel, Goleinu Adonai, Tevahot Shamo Kedosh Israel, Baruch Ata Adonai, Gal Israel, Israel. And we continue with Amidah on page 140.
Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agitahilatecha. Eternal God, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu v'emotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei HaKol, v'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, u'Mevi Gula Livnei v'Neihem, Lama'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayem etim atarav lehoshia, Mashiv haruach u'morid hageshem, Mizrach hashemesh u'morid hatal, Mechalkel chayim v'chesed, Mechayem etim barachamim rabim, Somech noflim v'rofei cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Micha mocha bal gevurot, Umido melach, Melech meimit umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, Neman atah lachayot meitim, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye hametim. We sanctify your name on earth as in the prophet's vision. The hosts of heaven sing your praise above. For so it is written, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzavaot, Meloch ha'aretz kavodo. God's glory fills the universe. Baruch kavod Adonai mi makomo. From your concealment, majestic one, reveal yourself and rule over us, for you are our hope. Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohayich Tzion, Lador Vador. Hallelujah. Lador Vador Nagid Godlecha, Ulenetzach Nitzachim Kedushatecha Naktish. V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. You inspired our ancestors to hallow this day for your service. When upon its coming we pause to contemplate our life, we learn anew that we do not live by bread alone, but also by the spiritual nourishment we receive when we open ourselves to your influence. We thank you for the Sabbath day and for the opportunity it offers to enhance the quality of our lives. We thank you for its joy and for its peace. May our worship help us to take into our hearts its message of holiness and consecrate all our days by devotion to what is true, beautiful, and good. And an Elstree tradition is not to sing the song that's in the book on page 143. We put a variety, or not every time a variety. We have a different Shabbat song. And the one we've turned to recently is one I'm sure everyone will be familiar with and hopefully keen to join in with. It goes rather like this. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, בני ישראל עוד היא לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. And on page 143, we continue with the words of this Shabbat prayer, which we'll read together. Our God and God of our ancestors, may our rest on this day be pleasing in your sight. Sanctify us by your commandments and make us loyal to your teaching. Satisfy us with your goodness, gladden us with your salvation, and purify our hearts to serve you in truth. In your gracious love, eternal one, let the holiness of your Sabbath enter our hearts, and may all Israel who hallow your name be exalted by its peace. We praise you, O God, for the holiness of the Sabbath. Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu ba'amecha Yisrael, u'tefilatam ba'ahava tekabel, u'til ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha. Baruch atah Adonai she'otecha levadecha b'yirah na'avod. מודים אנחנו לך שאתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו לעולם ועד. צור חיינו מהגן ישנו, אתה לדור ודור. צור חיינו מהגן ישנו, אתה לדור ודור. נודה לך ונספר תהילתך. על חיינו המסורים בידיך ועל נשמותינו הפקודות לך. ועל ניסיך שבכל יום עמנו. ועל נפלאותיך וטובותיך שבכל עת ערב ובוקר וצהריים. ברוך אתה אדוני הטוב שמך ולך נאה להודות. Grant peace, welfare and blessing, grace, love and mercy to us and all Israel, your people. As a loving parent, bless us with the light of your presence. For by the light of your presence, eternal God, you have revealed to us the law of life, a love of kindness and righteousness, blessing and mercy, life and peace. For it is good in your sight that your people Israel and all peoples be blessed at all times with your gift of peace. We praise you, O God, the source of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, Oseh Hashalom. Yehu l'ratzon im refi v'hagyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai Yehu l'ratzon im refi v'hagyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai tzuri So that brings us to the end of the Amidah. And now we're going to continue with our Torah service on page 481. Over to you.
Page 481. En kamocha va'elohim Adonai, ve'en kamasecha, malchutecha malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch leolam va'ed, Adonai oz lemo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo b'shalom. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echadeinu, Gadol Shemo, Gadol Adonai Tzvi, Onerom Shemo I was just thinking whether Rabbi Pitt wants to take over. No.
I was going to, but somebody muted me. Lecha Adonai Hagadula v'Hagavura v'Hatiferet v'netzach v'hahod, ki chol b'shamayim uva'aretz, lecha Adonai hamamlacha v'hamitnaseh lechol l'rosh. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a remarkable moment where we're going to read, not simultaneously from two scrolls, that would be rather silly, but rather consecutively. And there will be different readings because I'm not going to spend too long on this. I could talk for the next hour about it if invited to do so, but that would be very inappropriate and rude, and it would send everybody scurrying to the kitchen for a cup of coffee or even lunch. So I will just briefly explain why it is that here at the Liberal Synagogue Elstree, we're on a different Torah cycle to just about the entire rest of the Jewish world. Some 10 years ago, I came up with the idea that part of the problem with our Torah reading cycle is that if you were to go to a liberal synagogue for an entire year, because we only read a short section of each week's portion, you'd end up missing about 80% of the Torah, if not more. And so I decided it might be easier if we went back to an older tradition, which is to spread the reading of the Torah over 3 years rather than one. But rather than just reading it in sequence, read it thematically. So for the whole of the first year of our 3-year cycle, which was last year in Elstree, we read just the book of Genesis all the way through, pretty much from start to finish. And there was we just read the whole thing literally consecutively. So at the end of each week's portion, it was possible to say, and we're going to carry on. Don't miss next week's exciting episode, because it carried on. And so by the end of that year, anyone who had attended synagogue for the entire year would have heard all of Genesis. The year 2, which is the cycle that we're in now, deals with subsequent history of the Israelite people after they went down to Egypt with Jacob. So it begins with the story of the Israelites being enslaved, and then the Exodus from Egypt follows, which we've had in the last few weeks, and then the crossing of the Sea of Reeds and entering into the wilderness and coming to the foot of Mount Sinai, where we got last week. And we're at that, interestingly, we're very close together in our readings at the moment. They're quite close. We are actually going to read the 10 Commandments this morning, because that's the next part of our historical cycle. And then we're going to move on in the Elstree cycle to the rest of the journeys through the wilderness and the arrival in the Promised Land. And then year 3, which will be the pleasure of Rabbi Tanya to plow her way through, unless she persuades Elstree otherwise, is going to be the 3rd year of the cycle, which looks at the rules and the regulations, the priestly laws and the prophetic visions, particularly those in the book of Deuteronomy, the teachings that underpinned the religion of the Israelites as they entered into the Promised Land. So that's a fairly truncated version of what could have gone on for months. If you're interested, I'd be happy to send you more information about it, but that's the reason why we're just now a little bit behind the traditional cycle and are reading this morning the 10 Commandments, Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 to 18. If you have a Siddur Lev Chadash in front of you, one of the interesting things to do at this stage, which I always encourage Elstree congregants to do, is to turn to page, lost the page, that's 536, I believe it is. I did look before. Yeah, 536 in your Siddur, if you have that in front of you, because that has the 10 Commandments. But interestingly, this is the second version of the 10 Commandments that comes from the book of Deuteronomy. So as you follow what I'm reading from the Torah, you'll notice some differences, because one of the interesting features of the Torah is that there are 2 versions of the 10 Commandments related at different stages, one right here at the foot of Mount Sinai, and the second on the borders of the Promised Land, ostensibly 40 years later. And clearly Moses has either had a bit of a memory lapse between this moment and that one, or something else is going on, and what's more likely is that somebody else wrote the version in Deuteronomy, and I'll leave it to you to play spot the difference with those 10 Commandments. So we're going to start our reading. Ya'amod David ben Chaim Likriyat HaTorah.
Et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Amvorach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher Bacha Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'notan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen. V'adibei Elohim et kol advarim ha'ele lemor. And God spoke all these words, saying, Anochi Adonai Elohecha asher hotzeiticha me'eretz Mitzrayim mi'beit avadim. I am the Eternal One, your God, who brought you out of Egypt from the house of bondage. Lo hiya lecha Elohim acherim al panai. You shall not have any gods before me. Lo ta'aseh lecha pesel v'chol tzumuna asher b'shamayim ma'al v'asher ba'aretz mitachat v'asher b'mayim mitachat la'aretz. You shall not make any image for yourself, any picture. There's anything that is in the heavens above, or on the earth below, or on the waters below the earth. Lo tishtachaveh lahem v'lo ta'avdem, ki ani anochi Adonai Elohecha el kaneh poked avon avot al banim al shileshim ve'al ribeim lesonai. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Eternal One, your God, am a jealous God, visiting the sins of the fathers upon the children to the third and even to the fourth generations. But visiting kindness to the 1,000th generation of those who love me and who observe my commandments. Lo tisai shem Adonai Elohecha lashav, ki lo yonakeh Adonai et asher yisa et shemo lashav. You shall not take the name of the Eternal One, your God, in vain, because God will not forgive anyone who takes that name in vain. And here comes one of the big differences. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadsho. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Sheishet yamim ta'avod va'asita kol melachtecha. V'yom hashvi'i Shabbat l'Adonai Elohecha. Lo ta'aseh kol melacha ateh uvinecha uvitecha avdecha v'amatecha uvachemtecha v'gerecha asher bisharecha. The seventh day shall be a Sabbath for the Eternal One, your God. You shall not do any work, nor you, nor your son, nor your daughter, your male or female servants, or your cattle, or the stranger who is within your gates. Ki sheishet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, et hayam ve'et kol asher bam, v'yanoch bayom hashvi'i, al kein beirach Adonai et yom hashabbat v'yikadeshehu. For in 6 days God made the heavens and the earth, and the sea and all that is in it. And God rested on the seventh day. And for that day, God blessed the seventh day of the Sabbath and made it holy. Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha, lema'an ya'arichun yamecha ala adama, asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach. Honor your father and your mother in order that your days may be lengthened on the land which the Eternal One, your God, is giving to you. Lo titzach, lo tinaf, lo tignov. Lo ta'aneh v're'echa ed shaker. Lo tachmod beit re'echa. Lo tachmod eshet re'echa. V'avdo v'amato v'shoro v'chamoro v'chol asher l're'echa. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male or female servant, his ox or his donkey, nor anything that belongs to your neighbor. So those are the 10 commandments, and I hope you noticed, if you are following in the prayer book, the differences between those and the version in Deuteronomy.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher notan lanu Torat emet, v'hayei olam notah b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah.
Amen. I'll just lift this up. Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato.
Yeshikoach to Peter and to Robert Pete. And Dr. Peter Gordon is the president of Nottingham Liberal Synagogue. And now we continue with the Torah reading from the Parashat Truma. Parashat Truma is this Shabbat's reading for those communities, the majority of communities, Rabbi Pete said, who follow the annual cycle of reading the Torah, though Nottingham Liberal Synagogue might be now inspired by Rabbi Pete's introduction and to consider the triennial cycle of reading of the Torah. And I will start with a short introduction to, you will be pleased to know, a very short Torah reading. In the annual cycle of the Torah reading, which Nottingham congregation is following, this Shabbat is Parashat Truma from the book of Exodus. It deals now with the building of the tabernacle, and namely the materials and the most important parts of it: the ark, the menorah, and the altar or sacrifices and its accessories, as well as the enclosure. But the parasha receives its name from the Hebrew word for the nations, which is teruma. God tells Moses to ask people to bring gifts. Moses should accept gift from every person whose heart will move him. Professor Richard Friedman points out that the command is a strange one linguistically. The whole people is not commanded to give. People only have to give if they're individually moved to do so. But the whole people are commanded to collect it. It is like when someone says that he or she gave a gift to the congregation when she or he themselves are members of that congregation. Professor Nahum Samna explains that teruma is a technical term referring specifically to that which is set aside by its owner and dedicated for sacred use only. Isn't that interesting that for the place of God's dwelling, of God's presence, the Eternal One asks only for donations from those people who wish to give them, rather than making those donations obligatory, like taxes, which we know that Israelites kind of paid as well with their half shekel contributions. What is most interesting is that in the next parasha, we will learn that people were not only willing to give, but Moses had to ask them to stop giving, stop donating, because there were too many donations. It is the same with our communities today. We donate both our time and our money to it. And without each of us, each single of us, and our willingness to support our communities, they won't exist, and they won't make any impact on the world around us. For example, this Wednesday, I was part of the Salam Shalom kitchen team, catering for 150 takeaway meals, plus a fresh salad box for each person, and supermarket and private donations were assorted in bags for each person. We had 14 people, 14 volunteers working. The feeling of people, and particularly 4 young people amongst us, coming together only because they want to and not because they have to, and doing it together, all the manual tasks, including washing up and cleaning the synagogue at the end, because they all want to help other people, is difficult. It's difficult to describe. It is elevating for sure. I can't speak for others, but my weeks at SASH, and particularly during the lockdown since the beginning of the pandemic, has made me a better person. And indeed, the current government recognized on an unprecedented scale the importance of religious community during the pandemic and the charitable work, both within our communities and outside, that we do. But most importantly, and I'm going back to the word teruma at the beginning of the parasha I'm about to read, when we donate our time or money to our community, we elevate ourselves. The root of the word teruma, which are 3 Hebrew letters, Resh, Vav, and Mem, in the Biblical Hebrew Dictionary stand for to rise, the verb to rise. to be high or to be exalted. So through giving willingly, either our time or money, we elevate our neshama, our emotional, mental, and spiritual being to a new height when we feel good about ourselves. Well, I have to say that lots of people spend lots of money to achieve those states of mind through different substances. But the secret is really simple. Give and give from your heart, as the Torah teaches us. And how lucky we are to achieve those wonderful states through our good deeds. So I would like to thank all of you for being there for both of our communities and continuing your support. Without each of you, our communities would not be the same. And it is my pleasure and a privilege to call up to the Torah the life Vice President of Nottingham Liberal Community and the President of Elstree Liberal Community, Rabbi Alan Mann. Alan, thank you so much for your teruma, for your dedication to both of our communities and liberal Judaism over all these decades. Yeah, I will be reading, before we'll call Alan up, I would like to tell you, and you'll be pleased to know that we'll be singing the first 3 verses of the chapter 22 of the books of Exodus. The book of Exodus, chapter 25, verses 1 to 3. Ya'amot Abalev ben Menachem lekriyat Torah.
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Shebach banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah.
Amen. Oh. Amen. וידבר אדוני אל משה לאמור דבר אל בני ישראל ויקחו לתרומה מאת כל איש אשר ידבנו לבו תיקחו לי את תרומתי וזאת התרומה אשר תיקחו מאיתם זהב וחסד ונחושת. And the Eternal One spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to all the children of Israel and take from them a donation from every person whose heart moves him to give that donation. And that donation take from all those people. And the donations are gold and silver and copper.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. V'natan lanu torat emet. V'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah.
Amen. And I'll do a big Hagba, quick Hagba. Baruch Shenatan Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah. Lemo Israel Bigdushato. And we continue now with the 3 prayers after the Torah reading, which Rabbi Pete will share on his screen with us.
Adonai, Eternal One, God of our fathers and mothers, we ask your blessing for all the people working in the NHS and other essential services. Magan Avot, shield of our ancestors, shield them from the virus and other illnesses in your Shekhinah, in your protective presence, all those people and their families. Give them the strength and joy to continue doing their essential work for all the people of our country. We ask for your protection. May your presence be with them always. Amen.
Amen.
May it be your will, God of our fathers and mothers, that our sheltering in our places be for health and healing, longevity and life, sustenance and renewal and love. Let our best selves shine forth in these moments of uncertainty, these moments of unfamiliar distances, these moments that may yield stress or conflict, confusion or despair. Let peace arise inside us. Let kindness flow between us. Let deliverance rise up from heaven, and let health and goodwill radiate throughout the world as a river of blessings. Amen.
May it be your will, Eternal One, God of our fathers and mothers, that the divine healing light shines on those who've been exposed to coronavirus, those who have contracted the disease, and those who might contract the disease in the future. Protect them, heal them, and bring them speedily to full recovery. Heal their body, heal their spirit, and heal their soul. And let us say, Amen.
Amen. And I'm going to share with you now, this is a version of the Misha Berach, which has been used and I hope enjoyed and experienced, at least by Elstree, for almost the duration of the lockdown going back to last March. And it talks about blessing. It talks about not just those who are in need of blessing, which of course is what it's traditionally aimed at, but also those of us who feel sufficiently blessed, who are in a safe position to be able to extend our blessing to those who need it. So really it's a prayer for everyone, both those of us who feel able to give and those who need something given. So these words of Debbie Friedman. Avotenu, Makor Abaracha, Laimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu makor habaracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. So with those thoughts and requests for blessing in our hearts and in our minds, we now prepare to put away the Torah scrolls in our respective synagogues. Yahalalu et Shem Adonai, ki neskav shemo levado, hodo al eretz v'shamayim, vayaren keren le'amo tahila, lechol chasidav, livnei Yisrael, am kerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. On page 489 in the book. Behold, a good doctrine has been given you, do not forsake it. It is a tree of life to those who hold it fast, and all who cling to it find happiness. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Help us to return to you, O God, then we shall return. Renew our days as in the past. So the agreement that we reached, Tanya and I, was that I would have, as long as it took her to get from closing the ark back to the reading desk for do my sermon. So it's back over to Tanya for the Aleinu, which is on page 520.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, אשר שם חלקנו ליחד את שמו, וגור עלינו להמליך מלכותו. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שהוא נוטה שמיים ויסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגופי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו יפה זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבת אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא אלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד.
And in place of the second paragraph of the Amidah, here in Austria, we've taken to reading a section that you can find on page 213 in your books, page 213, looking forward to the Messianic age, which the Aleinu anticipates. And then all that has divided us will merge, and then compassion will be wedded to power. And then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind. And then both men and women will be gentle. And then both women and men will be strong. And then no person will be subject to another person's will. And then all will be rich and free and varied. And then the greed of some will give way to the needs of many. And then all will share equally in the earth's abundance. And then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old. And then all will nourish the young. And then all will cherish life's creatures. And then all will live in harmony with each other and earth. And then everywhere will be called Eden once again. And on that day, the eternal God shall be one and known to be one. Bayamahu Yehe Adonai Echad U'shemo echad. It is hard to feel serene when our world is not complete, when those who once brought wholeness to our life have gone. Yet in the emptiness their passing leaves behind, we are not alone. For we have the companionship of the living, and even our loved ones who have died live on in our hearts, for what they were is part of what we have become. And on this Shabbat, in both our communities, there are names that we call to mind who have left us on this anniversary.
We remember today Rachel Pike, daughter of Neil Pike, Zichrona Livracha, bless her memory, be for a blessing. We also remember today Cyril Jacobs, husband of Lynn and father of Phil Jacobs. Zichrona Livracha, bless his memory, be for a blessing. And if you have a yahrzeit today, please feel free to unmute yourself after Rabbi Pete will mention the names of his congregation.
So here in Elstree, we call to mind the names of Stella Amswich, mother of Rebecca Davey and Donna Friedman, Harvey Gould, the father of Leonie Sampson, and Jack Schifrin, the father of Carol Hurst, whose yahrzeits fall at this time. We also mention the name of Howard Shopper, the husband of Joan, father of Andrea, Matt, and Kate, who passed away earlier this week. Zichronam Livracha, may all of their memories be for a blessing. And as Rabbi Tanya said, if you have any other names who have yahrzeits at this time, now is the moment, please, to call them out.
My mother, Molly Snapper, Moras Malka Bat Rabbi Yehuda HaKohen, I have yahrzeit today. Thank you.
Zichrona Livracha, David, bless her memory, be for a blessing.
Thank you.
So may all of those whom we remember find their place in our hearts and our minds and bring blessing to us in ways that we will find comforting and which bring us peace. And let us remember that we honor those to whom we've said farewell best when we live as they would wish, responsibly and happily, even in the shadow of our loss. And so draw closer to the source of life in whom every life finds meaning, purpose, and hope. And let's join together to recite the Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, b'alama divarach chilutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chai echon u'v'yom echon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agalav v'zman kariv imeru, amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach li'olam u'la'almei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ah v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitada v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei l'kudashah b'richu, la'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata ta'amiram ba'alama v'imeru, amen. Yehi shalom ha'rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imeru, amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol b'nei adam, v'imeru, amen. So I'm going to hand back to Rabbi Tanya. I don't know if you have any announcements that you wish to make for your congregation, maybe about Purim, which is, of course, coming up later this week. So over to you, and then I'll share ours.
Yeah, thank you very much. We've got one of the most exciting Purim spiels, I think one of the best so far, written by Mike Saka. We're going to do some recording for it tomorrow. But usually our announcements are done by our co-chairs, and I wonder whether Jeff Cohen would like...
Yeah.
One or two things, Jeff, only one or two.
Just, Shabbat Shalom. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Shekayach to our musical rabbis, Rabbi Tanya, Rabbi Pete. That's a really seamless joint service. So Shekayach to both of you. And actually, seeing that we're in Elstree, I want to nominate for Oscars to our hosts, our Zoom hosts and our streaming hosts. That's Anthony Moss and Mike Harris from our side. So congratulations to them. Anyway, there's so much going on. I've got to do this very quickly because I'll be all day. So let me tell you what's going on tonight at 6:30.
the Havdalah service led by Rabbi Tanya. Tomorrow, Sunday night, 8 o'clock, we've got our film club. And the film is Crossing Delaney. And that's going to solve an argument between Leslie and me about what we're going to watch tonight. So, Crossing Delaney, that is. On Tuesday at 7 o'clock, we've got a special cooking session, Esther's Feast, cooking for Purim, led by with Angela Donor. And then, let me see, Wednesday, we got the Modern Hebrew class. I think that's I think that may be the last session, I'm not sure. Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock, the usual Parsha discussion with Rabbi Tanya. And then on Thursday night at 6:30, this is not to be missed. Everybody must watch this. It's Purim and Zoom together, a talent show with directed another nomination for an Oscar, Mike Sacker. So that is something special to watch. Let me just go on, not much more. Friday, oh yeah, there's quite a lot more. Heroes and Hamantashen, that's a discussion with Rabbi Tanya. And then next Shabbat, Erev Shabbat and the Shabbat morning services. Next week, we're going to share it with Northwood and Pinner. And just one more thing, just ahead, can I just say we're looking forward to the Bat Mitzvah on 6th of March for Ruby Book. So that's an announcement for a couple of weeks' time. So those are some of the announcements and things going on in Nottingham.
Thank you very much, Jeff. We're actually sharing service. There is an update with LJS next Shabbat. Pete, over to you. And also it's going to be a Purim Spiel plus talent show. Both will be combined. Robert Pete.
Well, I feel kind of, I don't know, second best now. You know, you come here and then you go over to the LJS and then you go to Northwood. I thought we were unique in your hearts. Huh? Well,
you are absolutely unique in our hearts. It's a long
story. That's that. All right, then we'll live with that. Okay, just a quick couple of announcements for here. Obviously, Havdalah this evening at the same time as it's happening in Nottingham, 6:30 for Havdalah. Tomorrow is half term, but there is a Bar Mitzvah class meeting at 11:15. And Purim for us will be, surprisingly, on Thursday evening. Details are in the weekly bulletin, but obviously I'll give more information out at all of our evening gatherings, which are at 6:30 every evening until, well, forever, or at least when this blooming lockdown ends. But in the meantime, Shabbat Shalom to one and all. I'm not quite sure if we got as far as deciding who was leading Kiddush, but I've got this silver cup here, so I guess it's up to me. And we're going to sing the slightly more sedate version of the Vashamru to precede Kiddush. Vashamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, l'dorotam barit olam, beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam, ki sheshet yamim, asa Adonai, et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, uvayom ashevi Shabbat vayinafash, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen. L'chaim to everyone.
L'chaim.
L'chaim.
And we'll unmute you all in a minute so you can wish each other Shabbat Shalom. There are various thanks and Shabbat Shaloms appearing on the Elstree Facebook page where a couple of dozen people are watching. So if we add that to the 55 here on Zoom, that's a pretty impressive combined congregation. So Shabbat Shalom to all of you, and thank you for being with us this morning, now this afternoon, and allowing us into your homes. And it just remains for me to uncover a slightly, but not much larger color than usual for a Shabbat morning, because only me gets to eat it, and say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat Shalom. So let's unmute here on Zoom and wish each other Shabbat Shalom.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Everyone
is unmuting themselves. Thank you to our Zoom host, which were Mike Harris and Anthony was from NLS, Mike Barrell from Elstree Synagogue. Thank you so much for volunteering and doing such a brilliant job this morning. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom.
Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you very much. Lovely to see you.
After.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom. Thank you very much. Lovely service.
Lovely service. Yes.
Tanya,
Lovely to get together. Shabbat shalom, Alan.
Shabbat shalom.
Like you laid it
Tanya,
down.
thank you very much for the service. It was most impressive. We should work together more often.
Yes.
What I thought. That's what I thought. It's we're a good team, and Robert inspired me to take lessons in guitar playing.
Only if you,
Give him singing lessons.
only if you give me your voice.
It's wonderful for us.
Wish you a long life, David Snapper.
Thank you very much.
The others.
Yeah, long life. Long life.
David.
Yeah, wish you long life, David.
Thank you. Thank you for a lovely service. It's wonderful.
Yes, it has.
Shabbat shalom, Jonathan.
I can see Robert from Malta with us and Henry. Hello, lovely to see you both.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here with you.
Who's that? Oh, hello.
I've missed
Hi, Frank. I've got some potato chips for you, Frank. Would you like some?
You can't take the man out of the country.
He wrote it down, and when he wrote it down, he wrote crisps. But as he read it, the American came out.
At least simultaneous translation there. That's fantastic.
That's what they'll remember.
Right. As I mentioned to Tanya, and as indeed Rabbi Tanya mentioned at the beginning, our services, I strive to keep them within the hour. So I'm actually on overtime now. But it's been worth it to be part of this special service. So thank you to Rabbi Tanya, to everyone in Nottingham, everyone in Elstree and wherever else you are in the world. And but that's my lot now.
Thank you, Rabbi Pete.
The meter is running. Shabbat shalom, one and all. It's been a joy to be with you.
Great, it was great
I hope we'll do this again soon. Lots of love. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Hi, Frank. And
Shalom.
Shalom, everyone.
Hi, it's Karen.
Right.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Valerie. Hi, Frank. Lovely to see you. I saw Saba and Safta earlier, but I hadn't actually recognised who you were.
Our grandchildren renamed us.
Very lovely. Really lovely service. Thanks, Pete.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, and you. And you.
How are you keeping?
And Pete, thanks for the sermon.
Pete has disappeared. How are you keeping in the lockdown?
Janet Clark. We're fine. We were.
She's home. Yeah. I think we're still streaming. It hasn't stopped.
No, the streaming is still there, so that our Facebook friends can still see us all.
Oh, I see. Okay, lovely. Yeah, I'll see you soon then. Shabbat shalom. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
See you soon.
Yeah. Shabbat shalom. Goodbye. Shabbat shalom, Margaret.
Bye, Margaret. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. See you soon, hopefully.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Mike, tell me when you want me to stop live streaming.
I think you can stop the live stream now. Thank you, Mike.